Find a pen and fill the paper with the message that it wants to send.
Well, I am continuing my conversation with Captain Laura Savino, which I should have used your title in my original introduction, the author of Jet Boss, a female pilot on taking risks and flying high. I want to make sure I get the subtitle right. And we're going to talk about your writing journey. And I have to say, like, this book was so well written. And it definitely didn't feel like an amateur or a first-time writer. And I know that you're not. So tell us about your writing journey and the other published works that you have out there in the world.
Oh gosh, my writing journey. Well, I don't really think of myself as having a writing journey. I just started writing these. All right, so I just started writing these chapters, as I said before, and then I had a collection of all these stories. I had like twice as many stories, which I still have, that I ultimately put in the book. And then I was trying to figure out, okay, so I think I want to make this a book, and this was over a number of years. So I was trying to figure out how to make it into a book. I didn't want it to be like a collection of short stories. I wanted it to be like one, like read more like a novel. And so then I came up with a theme, and then I just started pulling out any stories that didn't have that theme in it. Like I have some really great flying stories that have nothing, like no real lessons that were related. And so I just dwindled it down. And then, and so I got all that together. And so as far as getting it published goes, I believed that I had to go to a traditional publisher because that's what everybody said you needed to do. And I really felt like, since my book was a memoir and it was heavily involved with United Airlines, that it wouldn't have any credibility unless if it was self-published. I'm not saying I feel this any longer, but at the time it wouldn't have any credibility if it was just self-published. So I really wanted to find an agent and then go traditional and do it right. And am I like jumping ahead in questions here to the process?
No, you're fine. Keep talking. I mean, I have other questions, but we'll go back to them. Keep talking about that because it's an important point and one that I talk about and think about a lot. So
right. So I really felt so then I educated myself. There's 3 different ways to publish. You can do an agent, go traditional. You can do hybrid, or you can do self-publishing. And I was determined I was going to do it right. I was going to do it the hardest way. I was going to get an agent and do traditional. And I would not give that advice to someone like behind me. And if I do a second book, I'm just going to probably just self-publish it. But I tried very hard to get an agent. I wasted an enormous amount of my life sending out query letters, an enormous amount of my life. And I realized that I was jumping through a lot of hoops that really weren't getting me anywhere. And then I started attending writers' conferences. And at a writers' conference, I ended up winning first place in a writing competition. And then I suddenly had agents that were interested in me. So that was what tipped it for me, was having this recognition through a writers' conference. So I got an agent, a really big agent. She actually had represented Barack Obama. And New York City agent. I think they're like the second largest in the world. Super, super good agent. Ends up too good an agent. And I signed a contract with her, and immediately she needed me to write a proposal for my book, although my book was finished, instead of sending out my manuscript because it was nonfiction. And that was months of my life wasted putting together this proposal, which I swear was harder than writing the actual book because I had no interest in the proposal. Everyone says, but you learned so much from writing a proposal. In the end, you won't regret it. It's worth it. It was a complete and utter waste of my life, coming up with a marketing plan and all this baloney. Any case, she had my book for 2 years and she never placed it. And I will say I actually have here, I looked this up before today. I have 165 rejections.
Wow.
Yeah, 165 total. I was rejected. I had 103 query letters were rejected by agents. And then 62 submissions by my agent, when I got an agent, to publishing houses, to editors, were ultimately rejected over 2 years. And so all of that, trying to do it right, trying to go down that path, turned out to just be an enormous waste of my time. It turned out to be just a big circus. And I got out of all that, got out of the contract after 2 years, and I ended up pitching smaller publishing houses and immediately got 2 offers and had a choice of publishing companies that were not Random House or Simon and Schuster, but smaller companies. And I went with so it's still traditionally published, I guess you could say, but through a much smaller publishing house. So that's how I eventually. So
how did you get out of that contract with your agent?
She actually wanted out of it too. It was mutual because she had had it for 2 years. She was rejected 62 times. And she was like, there's nothing more I can do. She was really nice, like nothing personal. She was great. I like her as a person. What happened was, and she would send me the rejections. People would read like my proposal or excerpts, and the proposal had a summary of every chapter and all that stuff. And invariably, what happened over and over and over again was the editor would love it. It would go through their processing. It would go to one table and it would get approved, my book, and then it would go to the next table. And at the end, every single time it was rejected by marketing team. And the marketing team, which is like the final round table when it comes to the publishing house, is just the numbers people. And the bottom line was, we don't care how good this book is. The bottom line is that it's a niche market. It's aviation. Who's going to be interested in that? And it's a memoir, and we've never heard of her. She's not a celebrity. Right. Who's going to pay money for a memoir? And so strictly as far as marketing goes, I was rejected. So I never felt discouraged about my writing. In fact, I got a lot of really positive feedback about the writing, but the editors couldn't get it past the business aspect of it. And so I was too small a fish in a big sea there for to be with an agency that big is what it came down to. So
it's a recurring theme. I've had this conversation with so many authors. Mandy Hickson just last month when she got an agent. Nobody wanted her book. They said it was no. She has this one rejection from a big company, claiming that plain books are for a male audience and nobody wants to read about a female pilot. So, but apparently people do want to read about a female pilot. You seem to be doing pretty well with this book.
Yeah. So I published it through a smaller house, and then I just did all the legwork myself. But now it's the Smithsonian, is carrying my book. Both Air and Space Museums, National and Uber-Hazy, are both carrying it. It's getting picked up by writers groups and just also it's doing well. And I just did my own audiobook. So I figured out that you don't need to pay somebody $8,000 to do these things. You can actually do pretty much everything yourself in this day and age. And I don't know a thing about audiobooks. I didn't know a thing about any of this at all. I was just a dumb pilot. And I figured it out, and it's remarkably easier. I figured out to do things yourself right now in this industry with all the tools that are out there than to try to hire somebody, to do it for you. Everything just too many opportunities for things to get screwed up. The more cooks you have in the kitchen there is the way it worked out for me.
I mean, so Mandy went with the self-publishing route. You did go through the traditional publisher, which probably helps you with your distribution or whatever. But I feel like I'm starting to feel more empowered by these conversations and what I've learned from these individual mentoring sessions that I've had with every one of you authors. I feel very empowered to take control. And there's a pun in there with the title of my book, but to take control of things myself. So I appreciate that, because I never would have gotten here the way that I'm feeling now without having these conversations and learning the lessons from all of you. And I hope that the other potential or aspiring authors out there will listen to all these interviews and take those lessons also.
Yeah.
But I read that you had some things published before. So Chicken Soup of the Soul.
I do. If I'd known you were going to bring that up, I would have. Actually have my boxes right there. I'm in 3 Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and that, yeah, actually that was my first professional publishing gig. They're put out by Simon and Schuster, and they're in all the Barnes and Noble worldwide, and yeah. So the bottom line is, so Chicken Soup for the Soul, they put out a series of books. Each book has a different theme, and they're open to anybody who is out there can enter. Just go online, and you can go to their website, and they tell you what their upcoming books are. They take submissions. It's like up to they get up to 5,000 submissions per book. Wow. And then they choose. And
you were chosen 3 times.
Yeah, I entered 3 times, and on all 3 times I was picked. Wow, so
that's
I've never been rejected by them, but they ended up making my story the cover story for the second section of the book. And in the introduction, they talk about my chapter and the intro of the book. And I think on the description online, that talks about my chapter. So
what's that story about? Just out of curiosity.
It's called My Flying Tribe, and it's a story about being a teenager and finding my tribe at the airport, and then making a whole career out of the support that I got from the community.
Oh, I love it. Now I have to read that to supplement the things that you said in the book and the things that we just talked about in the book portion of the interview. That's awesome. And then was there one other book out there? Talk about it. So tell us about that.
Years back, when I was sending out queries, I was rejected from one publishing house, but they said, we're not interested in this. However, we love your perspective. Can you write us we're doing a collection, a book of different stories. It was for men. I'm trying to remember the title of the book now. It was a book for men that never grow up. And so they asked me, would it be possible for you to write a chapter about how you can convert your knowledge as a pilot into saving fuel aerodynamically efficiently for your car? And I thought, yeah, I can do that. So I wrote this chapter, and they didn't change a thing. This is so funny, Liz. You know what the only thing they changed? So I wrote this chapter, and when I went through the editing department, they didn't change a word of what I wrote, except every place where I talk about a pilot and I called a she or a her, they changed it to he and him, so that no, they did, because they said the men reading the book wouldn't be able to relate if they thought the pilot was a woman, so they had to hide that. But that was the only thing that they changed. And so that was the first book, and I got that because I had sent them a query letter for my book, and they ended up contracting me to write a chapter for this book.
Well, so they contracted you, and in the Chicken Soup for the Soul, was that a paid publication? Do they pay you?
So what they do is yes. So if you get selected, you don't get royalties, but they pay you a flat fee for, they purchase your story, and then they own your story. And then they give you a whole box of books for free that you can sell or do whatever you want. And then for the lifetime of the book, which is kind of all into perpetuity, it's Chicken Soup for the Soul, you can buy your book if you're in it for half price or something super, super, super reduced. And so if you ever want to do book signings, in fact, I brought I think 3 of my books to our first conference, and I had my book, and then I had 3 Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and they sold first. They sold my first 10 minutes I was there. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah. I think we have another book club member, one that I know of, Rocky Ramsey, who wrote the story of her sister-in-law, who was a WASP in World War II, who was also somebody who's been published in Chicken Soup for the Soul. So that's a neat little venue to submit your stories if you don't have a full length book. And it's
translated into languages all around the world, and they're on the shelves in every Barnes and Noble you could walk into anywhere in the country. I can walk into Barnes & Noble and find at least 3 books on the shelves that have my name on them. So
that's crazy and very cool.
It is crazy.
And so you alluded to winning this award in a writer's group. Can you talk a little bit about the resources? I mean, you said you don't think of yourself as having a writing journey, but you had to, and you joined writers groups. So tell us about the resources that you found support in.
Yeah. Uh, wow. I think like I joined a writers group, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. All right. So just to back up, so I wrote all the chapters, was trying to figure out a way to put them together, kind of came up with an idea, but it was still kind of a mess, right? Because I didn't really know. I knew how to tell a story because it's just like me talking and then I write it down, but I didn't know how to make it into a book. And so that was my biggest challenge. So, and I also didn't know, I didn't have anyone else's take on, I didn't have anyone who read anything that I wrote that was interested. So when I was getting ready to try to get it out there and get it published, I thought, well, yeah, I'd like to join a writers group. And I had never knew of any writers groups. And so I literally just Googled writers groups and I found, Meetup, the app Meetup. Well, I found a writers group on Meetup and they just met at my local library, a bunch of people I never met, all strangers. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I went to that and it turned out to be the greatest experience. And a lot of people discourage writing groups because they say, well, you're going to get a lot of feedback from people that don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of the feedback is negative. And like, yeah, exactly. That's the point. That's exactly what happens. And it was amazing. It was wonderful because you get feedback from all sorts of people, a lot of them who have no interest in aviation, would never pick up your book in a million years. But because they're in your writing group, they're obligated, because you all swap chapters and you all take turns, they're obligated to read your work and give you their take on it. I got the best feedback from people that are not aviation oriented, that are not memoir oriented, that just read it and were like, oh, this is interesting, but I don't understand this, or could you make this more clear? Or, like, why did you, like, they would ask me questions and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I guess it's a good point. I guess maybe I need to explain that further. Or, oh, you're right. Maybe that part of it is missing. I should explain how I got there. Like I skipped a step because I'm assuming you know what's going on and you don't. So, joining a writers group was really just, I think, what brought my book together.
That's so great. And we last year started a critique group within the Aviatrix Writers Group, and I have three other members who were new to critique groups, and we just have a really great time reading each other's work. And not all of it is aviation related, even though we're all pilots. Not all of our writing is about that, and so I'm with you on that. That's so great. Good for you. And I think it's really important to expose your writing to as many readers as possible. To get that
you have
feedback.
to expose it to people that aren't super supportive, although it's important to find people that are supportive and nice and kind. But there were some people in my group that were like the chapter with where I was like buzzing people, and they're like, man, you just look like a biatch in that. Like, don't put that in your book. And I listened to their feedback, and I still put it in my book. It's still my choice, right? But it really definitely opened up, my ability to see what other people, might see that I perhaps didn't see myself. Yeah. So,
well, I can see whether it's because of that or whether it's your innate ability to tell a story. You did some things with words in the book that were excellent, like the metaphors that you used to describe the things that we do that would connect with, the layperson who is not a pilot. Were just very vivid and very descriptive. And all of like we were with you in the book, and it was very clear what was going on, where we were in space and time, and your feelings about everything. It was just, I can't say enough about the writing. This is such a mentor text, I think, for anybody writing a memoir, and particularly in aviation. So I hope that anybody who's considering writing their own memoir takes a look at this, takes a look at the structure. And I wanted to say, like, one of the things I loved, the structure of the book. I feel like there are definitely some time jumps, and that's okay. Like, I was still with you, and it follows this character arc, your character arc. One of the things I loved is the way that you opened the book with this scene in the cockpit of a bird flapping around. You're just flying along, fat, dumb, and happy, and then the bird starts like going nuts in the plane, and then it goes away, and everything is calm again. And I found that to be like wonderful metaphor for like your whole experience of, this aviation career and life, and sort of a universal metaphor for anyone in aviation. I love that you picked that story. Tell us about that really quick.
That story. Yeah. So that was absolutely true. I actually had so actually that flight, we took off out of Mexico City and we were coming into the country. And I do say at the beginning of the book, I changed locations a little bit. So I was told I had to change it. It couldn't be Mexico City because people would think I was trying to make a political statement about a stowaway coming into the country illegally, which I wasn't at all.
Okay.
Right. So, but because of the times that we were in, I'm like, I had to take out that part. And yeah, so we were just flying and we were coming into LA. All that's completely true. We're landing in LA. And as we're coming into land, I think it was like a crow. I don't even know what the heck it was. Like a black bird just shot up from in between my legs. And I was flying. I was the first officer on the aircraft, but I was the flying pilot. And it just shot up from in between my legs and hit my mouth, and then just started going crazy, zinging all around the cockpit. And we didn't know what it was. It was like the scariest. I swear to God, it was so shocking. It was like a horror film because its claws were out and it was like, it was like screeching, and it was kept hitting every. Oh my God, it was so.
It was hilarious to read, though. I can totally see how terrified you were. It was hilarious, and it was just like I said, this great metaphor for the chaos that you encounter, like a moment of chaos totally comes out of nowhere and disrupts your whole world.
It did. And then where the rudders go into the floor, there's openings, and we have a ventilation system that I won't go into that, but the air circulates, and it got into our ventilation system probably when we were on the ground in Mexico City. Yeah. We don't pick up birds in flight. Everything's closed up. But on the ground, we picked up a bird, and it got into our ventilation system, and then it got blown into the cockpit, and then it got sucked right back out through the hole that it had come out of. And then I could hear it in there because our E&E bay, which is a pretty open area, which is right underneath the cockpit, he was like hitting things and smacking into things. And I was coming into land, and the entire time I'm like waiting for him to come back through my legs. And I just got a low power thing on my laptop here. Hold on a second.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Nope. Let me just plug this in. Sorry, real quick.
Yep, that's okay.
There we go. That's it. And then he disappeared, and we landed. But it was just the freakiest, unexpected thing.
It was a great way to start the book, to hook us into your sense of humor, and to sort of the wild ride that being a pilot is. But something that you said just a minute ago, I think was an important point, that, if readers are going to take something away that you don't want them to, it's your story. You don't have to, you can put in what you want to put in. And it's obvious that you made choices about what you were going to include because you had your audience in mind. What you were trying to achieve with this book was to inspire young people and share what the culture is like. You didn't have to tell us every detail of your life. And I feel like that's an important point for people thinking about their memoirs, is how you choose to structure and cherry pick your experiences to get to send the message that you want to send. You have control over that.
Yeah. And there are definitely people that ask me, well, I want to hear more about your marriage. I want to hear about your divorce. I want to hear about like personal things. And I get that. I totally get that. That's interesting. And that's soap opera and that's juicy and everything, but that wasn't the point of my book. Right. And there are many books out there that are great books, but then they segue into using the book as a forum to, air some personal issues and make sure that they win because the other person can't present their side of the case. And
that. I think that is valuable too. If somebody wants to do that, that's the book they're writing. But we don't all have to be writing that book, and you weren't writing that book, so you put in what was relevant. Yeah,
that's exactly right. The point of my book, hopefully, is to encourage the next generation and maybe give some insight into the career and the job And my personal life wasn't a part of that message. So I kept it out.
Good for you. I think that was a great decision. And it didn't take anything away from your story at all to
Oh,
not have that
thanks.
stuff. So, you, I've asked you this before on the side, and I'm going to ask it now. So, do you think that this platform of 34,000 followers on Twitter has helped you promote and sell this book?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you should bring that up. So that's one really good thing that came from my agent. So when I had the agent and she was getting these rejections, their big thing was she doesn't have a big enough platform. Nobody knows her. It's a memoir. And so my agent said, build a platform. I had never been on Twitter in my entire life. I had like Facebook, which is just my friends. I wasn't on LinkedIn. I wasn't on anything. And so I forced myself to open up a Twitter account and to start tweeting. And it turned out to be like the most amazing, wonderful experience. I love Twitter. I have Twitter friends. I have people that like I talk to now that I met on Twitter that are like actual genuine friends. And I think it has helped tremendously. My tweets now, yeah, I have 34. Last night I had
34.4. Yes, 34.4 thousand. I checked this morning.
Yeah, like my tweets very often go into the millions. Like I'll tweet something. I think the most I got was 36 million views, but a lot of them go into the millions, and virtually all of them go into the hundreds of thousands. And so when I want to say something and I put it out there, 36 million people see it. And so it's real. I'm telling you, Liz, it's almost kind of like freaky, but I've had a really great experience with my social media. They say people are mean and all that. I really haven't experienced that. It's kind of like you get what you put out there. And right. My tweets are very positive and the people respond to them. And I've got the most amazing followers that contribute just the most amazing, positive, uplifting, responses back, and everybody has fun. And I think it has made a really big difference in my, I'll tweet something and I'll say, oh, my audiobook is out. And then boom, in a day I'll have, 26 sales
awesome.
that followed that tweet. So yeah, it actually does work.
Well, I share this experience with you. I wasn't on social media with the exception of Facebook, just connecting with family and friends, and then a little bit on LinkedIn, just professionally. I didn't pay close attention to it and missed the part where it turned into social media. And then I got on for this project, and I've had the very same experience, just a warm, welcoming community. And it's great. I enjoy it. So
yeah. People
it's
are
amazing
happy to be a part of it. It's like, right. Everybody contributes. I just love it. I just love it. I love hearing what everybody else has to say. It's fun. It's really fun.
Well, you seem to have nailed Twitter. I still haven't figured Twitter out, but I'm doing pretty well elsewhere. So it's really fun to watch. Okay. Well, what advice do you have for aspiring writers, or even more specifically, women in aviation who are considering writing their memoir?
What advice? First of all, I'll say read a lot. The more you read, the more you I used to just read for fun. Like I read a lot because I liked reading. But now when I read in an studious mindset. I'm looking to see how did they transition from this chapter to this chapter? How did they, jump time spans? If they want to skip from being 20 to being 30, how did they do that? So I think reading is the biggest classroom available. Just read other books and you will learn how to be a great writer. That was, I think, the biggest thing for me. And then join groups like this, join writing groups, meet strangers, not your mother or your best friend or your sister. Meet people that do not know you and really don't give a crap about you, that will honestly give you feedback, because that's what you need. You don't need a bunch of yes men. And it's something else. A lot of people say, you should schedule your writing, make it an obligation, write 1,000 words a day, no matter what. And I personally, I don't believe in any of that. To me, writing is an art. You have to feel it. You're getting your emotions out. You want to feel in your heart what you want your readers to feel. And if you are not in the mood, you're not going to create beautiful art. So I never, ever took writing as a mandatory, I got to get my 1,000 words in today, or I'm going to do it every day from 7 to 8 a.m. because I'm going to be disciplined. It's not a discipline. It's something that you have to be in the mood to do it well. And that's what's worked for me. So I would maybe be up at 2 a.m. because I just suddenly had an overwhelming feeling of, I remember this happened. I have to write it down because I'm feeling it now. And then other times where it's like the perfect time to write because the kids are at school and you're totally free, but I'm not really in the mood. So, my advice is find other people, join groups, get support, get critique, and remember you can do it all yourself. And when I say do it yourself, let me just add, I don't mean like literally like be your own editor, be your own graphic design. What I mean is you can self-publish and you can hire individuals to work with you, but you still have control. Find someone who can help you design a cover because that's their expertise. But you still have full control over what that cover looks like. Like find other people, and there are plenty out there that can work with you to polish your product.
That's all great advice, Laura. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights about writing and for sharing our wonderful conversation about your book. I can't wait to see you in February in Long Beach for the Women in Aviation International Conference once again, and to any of the readers who might meet us there.
Yes. And one last thing I'll say is if anybody reads my book, I hate being gratuitous, but put a review up. Amazon reads, Barnes & Noble. It's really hard asking for reviews, but you don't have to write anything. You just like give it stars and not even, that's something else I figured out is writers have to support each other, and it's really important to get those reviews.
Absolutely. And that's, I don't think that's gratuitous at all, that we and that's one of my mantras too. And like and subscribe to my interview series, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review if you're on Apple podcasts as well, because the same thing is true for this kind of medium, to reach as broad an audience as possible. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thanks, Liz. It was great talking with you.
To save for later, you cannot trust it to come again. To wait for you to find a pen and fill the paper with the message that it wants to send.